Hi, this is Caitlin Rohde with Sarasota Gulf Coast Realtors, and I'm here with Jason Kubisiak today from start to finish, drafting and design. And I'm really excited because he's here to tell you a little bit about velocity and flood zone construction. It's definitely something in our area that is very important. So Jason, I'm glad to have you here. Thanks so much. Just a little information about that. Some things that people typically ask you questions on.
Perfect. Thanks for having me. I guess we're going to talk a little bit about two different types of construction that are very important here in Sarasota. The first one I'm going to talk about is flood zone construction. Flood zone construction is any type of construction in a flood-prone area. Anything on the beach, anything on the water. This type of construction requires that we build up higher above the ground level, up to a level called base flood elevation. Base flood, there's actually two types, base flood and design flood. Base flood is the elevation that FEMA sets for us that we have to build up to. The Florida Building Code just adopted a second elevation called design flood elevation, which is 1 foot higher than the basic base flood elevation. Now when you build in base flood, and when you build above base flood, everything below has to be flood resistant materials. All of your wood has to be pressure treated, all of your materials have to be water resistant stainless steel materials. And when we build in this type of construction, we build on a stem wall, which a stem wall is just basically blocks that come up out of the ground to set the house up in the air. Anything below that base flood elevation cannot have any plumbing, cannot have any electricity. The walls have to be designed in a way that water can come through them and come out of them with flow-throughs. And a flow-through is a way that water comes through the building, can stay in the building, and then can pass back out of the building, allowing the building to stay in place and not wash away.
That seems important.
It is very important. Flow-throughs, there's a couple different types of flow-throughs. There's a smart vent, which is probably the most popular, and it's a hydrostatic vent that allows water to come up against it. When the pressure is high enough, it allows the water to come in. You can also do just basic openings. The second type of construction is called velocity zone construction, and velocity zone construction is basically beachfront construction with high wind areas. When we design in a velocity zone, our base flood is typically higher, so our ground floor level, our first floor of living, is actually up higher in the air. Everything down below is typical the same way that flood zone construction was done with walls. The only difference here is the walls can break away if a storm comes. We also design with piles in between the walls that go down below base flood elevation, and they actually hold the house in place if the house was to ever experience a high flood. When we have a flood, the water comes in and basically it can knock away the walls, it can scour the dirt, which means takes the dirt back out to sea, and that's kind of how barrier islands are created, with that sand that goes back out. But what would happen is your house would be still standing on the piles. It's designed to stay in place. We can't have any AC below the base flood elevation, or it's not allowed to be below base flood elevation. We must have a solid core door at the top entry coming into the house. So what I mean by that is we're allowed to have somewhere between 150 and 300 square feet of air-conditioned space below base flood, and you walk upstairs and you actually have to open a door to get into the house. The next thing I want to talk about is the FEMA 50% rule. This is a rule that FEMA came up with that was originally designed to repair storm-damaged homes. If a storm came and damaged your home, they would allow you to put money back into a non-conforming structure. Local building departments have since adopted, they've allowed us to use it to add on to existing non-conforming structures, but it's a 50% rule, and it's 50% of the structure value, not of the land value. So if you buy your house for $1 million, your house is probably worth $200,000 or $300,000. They will give you $150,000 to put back into your house. With the 50% value, you have to prove to the county that you're only putting 50% of the value back into the house. They make you fill out paperwork that explains or defines every piece of material that goes into that house. All your drywall board, all your screws, your flooring, your appliances, everything you put in counts against that 50% rule.
So basically, they don't want you trying to fix up something that is too far gone.
Correct.
Okay.
It was not really designed to do that, although nowadays that's kind of what it's become, and they've allowed us to phase and do multiple steps and turn $100,000 homes into $1 million homes, which isn't a good thing. I would highly suggest hiring a contractor that's very familiar with doing the 50% rule, because there's a lot of paperwork that has to be gone through. We actually had a case a couple years ago that a client started doing work without a permit. They got red tagged, which means they did work without the permit and got caught. And they had done so much work to their home that there wasn't enough value to put the structure back together, so they ended up having to tear the house down. I think today the most important thing I can talk to realtors about is warn your clients about FEMA 50% rule and explain to them in detail what that is. We've been brought to the job site so many times and clients are not aware of the 50% rule. They have the money to do the renovation, but their budget allows them to do the renovation, but the 50% rule does not. And clients get very upset with us when they don't know the rules. Do not suggest phasing projects like we were just talking about. That's something that the city and the counties have talked about getting rid of and doing a one-time 50% or a 40% rule. When you do work below the non-conforming and you keep building these houses up, it's causing everybody's insurance rates to go up, which is really not what it was designed for. And one other thing I can leave you with is when you design a new home and it has to be above base flood, I would always suggest going at least 1 foot higher than base flood, because the base flood changes on a yearly or
So
every once in
cover
a while it
yourself.
changes. Cover yourself so you're not
Just-
building a home that doesn't
Yeah.
conform in a couple of
Yeah,
years.
that makes sense, especially if you're putting a lot of time and effort. You might as well be ahead of the curve.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's pretty much all I have to talk about
Well,
today.
thank you so much. That was very informative, and it's very important, obviously, for our area.
Yes.
So if we have viewers that would like to get in contact with you, what's the best way to reach you?
Absolutely. The name of my company is Start to Finish Drafting. My email address is jason@stfdd.com. My phone number is 941-342-9401. And call me with any questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for watching, and definitely remember to tune in next week for more Real Estate Buying and Selling 101.